Hollywood has long been fascinated by the dark minds of serial killers, and some of the most terrifying movie characters owe their existence to real-life murderers. Behind the blood-chilling suspense and eerie villains, these films often draw from the grim realities of serial killers who terrorized communities across the U.S. In this documentary, we'll uncover the disturbing stories of 10 American serial killers whose twisted actions left a haunting legacy, inspiring some of the most bone-chilling characters ever seen on the big screen. Brace yourself for a journey into the true horrors that fed the nightmares of cinema. Ed Gein, the Butcher of Plainfield. Ed Gein, a seemingly unremarkable man from the small town of Plainfield, Wisconsin, forever changed the perception of rural America with his macabre crimes. Born in 1906, Gein led an isolated life under the oppressive control of his devoutly religious mother, Augusta, who instilled in him a deeply twisted worldview. After her death, Gein began unearthing corpses from local graveyards, using the bodies in grotesque rituals and fashioning disturbing items from human remains. While his criminal activities came to light after the discovery of his connection to several murders in the late 1950s, it was the sheer horror of his actions that shocked the nation. Despite being responsible for only 2 confirmed killings, Gein's acts transcended the brutality of typical serial killers, cementing his place in true crime lore as the Butcher of Plainfield. Gein's twisted legacy left an indelible mark on popular culture, inspiring some of the most iconic horror film characters in history. Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho drew heavily on Gein's unhealthy obsession with his mother, giving birth to Norman Bates, the disturbed motel owner. Leatherface from The Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Buffalo Bill from The Silence of the Lambs also reflect the gruesome nature of Gein's crimes, each character mirroring his penchant for body mutilation and the creation of trophies from human remains. These characters serve as terrifying symbols of the darker aspects of the human psyche, reinforcing Gein's impact not only on true crime enthusiasts, but on the broader world of horror cinema. His actions blurred the lines between real-life terror and fictional nightmares. Ted Bundy, the charismatic killer. Ted Bundy's notoriety stemmed not just from the chilling scope of his murders, but from his ability to mask his malevolent nature with charm and intellect. Born in 1946, Bundy was a seemingly ordinary law student who blended easily into society, a stark contrast to the typical profile of a cold-blooded killer. His victims, mostly young women, were lured into his trap by his smooth demeanor, striking good looks, and the facade of needing help, whether he pretended to be injured or impersonated an authority figure. Once isolated, his victims were at the mercy of one of the most calculating minds in the annals of serial crime. Bundy's spree, spanning multiple states throughout the 1970s, showcased a highly intelligent predator who exploited society's trust, evading capture for years before his final arrest in Florida. Bundy's life and crimes have been portrayed on screen with chilling accuracy, each performance shedding light on his disturbing duality. Mark Harmon's portrayal of Bundy, the deliberate stranger, was one of the earliest depictions of the killer, highlighting his unnerving ability to appear both affable and sinister. More recently, Zac Efron's performance, extremely wicked, shockingly evil and vile, added a layer of complexity, delving into Bundy's psychological manipulation and how he deceived not just his victims, but those closest to him. Through these portrayals, Bundy has come to symbolize the archetype of the charming killer, someone who weaponizes charisma to exploit others' trust, making his legacy as much about psychological cunning as it is about brutality. This manipulation, reflected in both real-life interviews and cinematic depictions, continues to captivate and horrify audiences. John Wayne Gacy, the killer clown. John Wayne Gacy's life was one of chilling contrasts. By day, he was a respected community member in suburban Chicago, often performing at local events as Pogo the Clown, entertaining children and engaging in charitable work. Behind this seemingly benign facade, however, Gacy harbored a monstrous secret. He was responsible for the torture and murder of at least 33 young men and boys between 1972 and 1978. Gacy lured his victims to his home under the guise of job offers or casual interactions before unleashing unspeakable horrors upon them, burying many of the bodies beneath his house. His capacity to lead this double life, one filled with public goodwill and private depravity, shocked the nation when his crimes came to light, making him one of the most notorious serial killers in American history. Gacy's terrifying legacy has cast a long shadow over popular culture, especially in shaping the evil clown trope that has haunted audiences for decades. Twisty the Clown, a deranged killer from American Horror Story, is a direct nod to Gacy's duality, the painted smile masking a deeply twisted mind. Stephen King also owes part of its nightmarish portrayal of Pennywise, the homicidal clown, to the unsettling legacy left behind by Gacy. The idea of a killer hiding behind the guise of a harmless entertainer plays into deep-seated fears about trust and vulnerability, and Gacy's crimes solidified the notion that evil can wear a friendly face. His influence transformed the clown from a symbol of joy into one of terror, forever altering how clowns are portrayed in media and how they are perceived in the public imagination. Aileen Wuornos, the Highway Killer. Aileen Wuornos led a life fraught with hardship, abuse, and violence long before she became one of America's most infamous female serial killers. Born into poverty and abandoned by her parents, Wuornos was subjected to sexual abuse and spent much of her early life surviving through prostitution. Her criminal path culminated in the murder of 7 men between 1989 and 1990, all of whom she shot while working as a hitchhiking sex worker along Florida highways. Wuornos claimed that her killings were acts of self-defense against men who had either raped or attempted to harm her. However, the extent of her claims remains a subject of debate, and she was ultimately convicted and sentenced to death. Her troubled life and tragic descent into violence highlighted issues of trauma, survival, and the harsh realities faced by women on society's margins. Wuornos' story was immortalized in the 2003 film Monster, in which Charlize Theron's transformative portrayal earned her an Academy Award for Best Actress. Theron's performance was both brutal and sympathetic, offering a complex look at a woman who defied traditional notions of serial killers, while also challenging the audience to consider how female killers are viewed differently in the media. Wuornos' portrayal set a precedent for films about women who kill, delving into themes of power, vulnerability, and victimization. In contrast to the cold, calculating male serial killer archetype, female killers like Wuornos are often depicted with more nuance, reflecting societal attitudes toward women, violence, and justice. This portrayal has contributed to ongoing discussions about gender and crime in both popular culture and true crime circles. Jeffrey Dahmer, the Milwaukee Cannibal. Jeffrey Dahmer's crimes are among the most disturbing in the annals of true crime, leaving an indelible mark on the public consciousness. Active between 1978 and 1991, Dahmer preyed on young men, luring them to his apartment where he committed acts of murder, dismemberment, necrophilia, and cannibalism. What made Dahmer's crimes particularly shocking was his chillingly methodical approach, mixed with an unnerving veneer of normalcy. His ability to evade suspicion for so long despite living in close proximity to others added to the horror when his atrocities were finally uncovered. Dahmer's soft-spoken demeanor contrasted sharply with the monstrous acts he committed, making him an object of both fascination and revulsion. His arrest and the gruesome details that followed captured worldwide attention, thrusting cannibalism and necrophilia into the spotlight in a way that horrified yet mesmerized the public. Dahmer's disturbing legacy has since influenced a wide range of characters in films and television. Actor Jeremy Renner delivered a chilling portrayal of the killer, highlighting his lonely, predatory existence and mental instability. More recently, Dahmer's legacy seeped into shows like American Horror Story, where similar characters reflect his cold detachment and gruesome acts of violence. The morbid fascination with Dahmer's cannibalism taps into a broader societal intrigue with extreme acts of deviance, exploring the darkest reaches of the human psyche. Cannibalism in true crime has a unique power to both horrify and captivate, as it represents a fundamental violation of societal norms. In Dahmer's case, the mix of his ordinary appearance and the unimaginable acts of violence has cemented him as one of the most notorious killers in history, with his story continuing to intrigue and horrify audiences globally. Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer. Gary Ridgway, known as the Green River Killer, terrorized the Pacific Northwest throughout the 1980s and 1990s, targeting vulnerable women, many of whom were sex workers or runaways. Ridgway was a methodical and prolific killer, ultimately confessing to the murders of 71 women, though the true number may be even higher. His modus operandi involved strangling his victims before disposing of their bodies in wooded areas or the Green River, leading to his ominous moniker. The investigation into Ridgway's crimes spanned nearly 2 decades, making it one of the longest-running serial killer cases in U.S. history. Despite several close calls, Ridgway evaded capture for years, often taunting law enforcement with his ability to remain anonymous. His arrest in 2001, thanks to advances in DNA technology, finally brought an end to his reign of terror, and Ridgway was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Ridgway's cold, calculated nature and the massive manhunt that eventually brought him to justice have inspired numerous adaptations, including the film The Riverman, which chronicles the Green River Killer investigation. These portrayals often emphasize the painstaking work of investigators led by Detective Robert Keppel, who spent years piecing together evidence and profiling Ridgway. Ridgway's ability to blend into society, maintaining a job and family life while committing these heinous acts, has also influenced other fictional depictions of serial killers in media. The use of forensic science, particularly the breakthrough in DNA analysis, is a focal point in both the real-life investigation and its dramatizations. These adaptations highlight the evolution of investigative techniques, from psychological profiling to advanced forensics, illustrating how law enforcement can finally bring even the most elusive killers to justice. Ridgway's case in particular underscores the importance of persistence and technological advancements in solving seemingly unsolvable crimes. Dennis Rader, the BTK Strangler. Dennis Rader, also known as the BTK Strangler, short for Bind, Torture, Kill, terrorized Wichita, Kansas for nearly 2 decades, committing a series of grisly murders from 1974 to 1991. Rader's chilling method of operation involved stalking his victims, breaking into their homes, and subjecting them to horrific acts of violence, often leaving behind a signature that cemented his nickname. His crimes went unsolved for years, in part due to his meticulous planning and the secretive, controlled nature of his attacks. Rader's sadistic tendencies were coupled with a deep desire for recognition, as he sent taunting letters to the media and police, relishing the fear he instilled in the community. What made Rader particularly unsettling was his ability to lead a double life. While committing brutal murders, he lived as a devoted family man, active church member, and respected leader in his local community. This duality allowed him to blend into society, making his eventual capture in 2005 even more shocking to those who knew him. Rader's crimes and his persona as the BTK Strangler have been depicted in various media, most notably in the series Mindhunter, where his obsessive need for control and acknowledgement is explored. Rader's narcissistic tendencies, his need to communicate with the public and feel superior to law enforcement, make him a chilling example of the archetypal narcissistic killer in crime dramas. His case has also influenced numerous films and shows that explore the terrifying idea of killers leading seemingly normal lives, juxtaposing their public personas with their private monstrosities. The dramatization of Rader's story, particularly his cold, methodical approach to both his murders and his long-standing deception, highlights society's deep discomfort with the idea that evil can exist right next door. David Berkowitz, Son of Sam. David Berkowitz, infamously known as the Son of Sam, unleashed terror across New York City during the summer of 1976, carrying out a series of shootings that left 6 people dead and 7 wounded. Berkowitz targeted young couples in parked cars, using a .44 caliber revolver to execute his victims seemingly at random. What fueled the fear was not only the murders themselves, but the cryptic letters Berkowitz sent to police and the media in which he claimed to be acting on the orders of a demonic entity. These taunting letters heightened the public's fear, and the already tense atmosphere of 1970s New York, marked by rising crime rates and social unrest, made the city seem like a powder keg ready to explode. Berkowitz's eventual capture in 1977 brought an end to the reign of terror, but the psychological scars and cultural impact of his crimes lingered long after his arrest. Berkowitz's killing spree and the hysteria surrounding it have left a significant cultural mark, particularly influencing films and shows about crime in 1970s New York. Various documentaries and crime dramas have examined the infamous Son of Sam letters and the bizarre explanations Berkowitz gave for his actions, further cementing his place in popular culture. The Son of Sam case has become symbolic of a city under siege, highlighting the vulnerability of urban life during a time of social decay. Berkowitz's influence extends beyond the crimes themselves, shaping portrayals of serial killers as unpredictable, psychologically unstable figures driven by delusions or external forces. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. Richard Ramirez, known as the Night Stalker, brought an unparalleled reign of terror to Los Angeles during the mid-1980s. His brutal crime spree, which included murder, sexual assault, and home invasions, seemed random, adding to the pervasive fear in the city. Ramirez's method of operation was particularly chilling. He entered homes at night, preying on his victims while they slept, a violation of the one place people consider safe. What made Ramirez even more frightening was his lack of a clear pattern. His victims ranged in age and gender, making him an unpredictable and elusive predator. Over the course of more than a year, from 1984 to 1985, his violent crimes paralyzed the community, and his trial further revealed the extent of his disturbed mind, including his obsession with Satanism, which played a key role in his killings. Ramirez's chilling courtroom antics, such as flashing a pentagram and professing allegiance to Satan, solidified his image as the embodiment of pure evil. Ramirez's horrific crimes have inspired numerous portrayals in media, most notably the Netflix documentary Night Stalker, which delves into the harrowing investigation that led to his capture. His character has also appeared in American Horror Story, where his persona as a Satan-worshipping killer is dramatized, reflecting his cultural legacy as a figure associated with fear and darkness. The 1980s, particularly during Ramirez's crime spree, were a time of heightened fear surrounding satanic cults, contributing to the broader Satanic Panic era. This period saw a surge of horror films and media focused on the occult and evil, tapping into societal anxieties. Ramirez became the real-life face of these fears, and his case reflects how cultural paranoia about Satanism was amplified by his horrific crimes. Charles Manson, the cult leader. Charles Manson is one of the most notorious figures in American criminal history, not for his direct participation in the infamous Tate LaBianca murders, but for the almost hypnotic control he exercised over his followers. Manson, a charismatic and manipulative leader, gathered a group of disaffected young people in the late 1960s, promising them salvation through his warped vision of an apocalyptic race war he called Helter Skelter. Using a mix of psychological manipulation, drugs, and countercultural rhetoric, Manson convinced his followers to commit the brutal murders of actress Sharon Tate and several others in August 1969, under the belief that these acts would ignite the chaos he had predicted. Though Manson himself did not physically carry out the murders, his influence over his family cemented his legacy as one of the most dangerous cult leaders in history. The sheer brutality of the killings, particularly the murder of a pregnant Tate, shocked the nation and marked the end of the 1960s peace and love era. Manson's influence has been deeply explored in films and television, Helter Skelter 1976 being one of the most famous adaptations of his story, based on the best-selling book by prosecutor Vincent Bugliosi. More recently, Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood 2019 reimagined the events surrounding the Tate murders, offering a fictionalized account that further solidified Manson's place in popular culture. These portrayals often focus not just on the gruesome crimes, but also on Manson's uncanny ability to manipulate and control his followers, painting a portrait of a man who wielded immense psychological power. Manson's case has significantly shaped the perception of cults in both film and society, making him the prototype for cinematic depictions of dangerous, charismatic leaders. His story has been a catalyst for countless explorations into the darker side of human nature, manipulation, and the capacity for violence within seemingly idyllic environments. The killers behind the infamous characters we've explored in this documentary remind us that truth is often more disturbing than fiction. While the movies they inspired continue to thrill and terrify audiences, it's the real stories of the lives lost, communities shattered, and justice pursued that linger long after the credits roll. As much as Hollywood embellishes for entertainment, the sinister deeds of these criminals leave an indelible mark on history, forever blurring the line between real-life horror and the nightmares brought to life on screen.